Hello everyone, welcome to the introduction of community, linkages and social mobility. This lecture is part of your paper on community media. This lecture will introduce you and help you to learn that the village community may not be looked as isolated whole. Instead, there is a frequent interaction between rural and urban community. In this lecture, we will discuss the consequences of such interactions. Although such interactions have a promise, however, the challenges are much more. The promise may be seen in terms of mobility from rural to urban community with the rise of middle class. However, the reasons for migration due to push and pull factor in community is worrisome. Any discussion on community linkages and social mobility needs to engage with the internal structures of community and society. This helps in understanding of rural-urban dynamics and their linkages, whether it be the social tension between rural and urban or symbiotic relationship between rural and urban or else as rural-urban continuum or nexus. In spite of the processes of urbanization and industrialization being slow, the urban influences the rural and rural impinges on the urban. Therefore, for the real picture of society and its changes, it is imperative to understand the rural-urban linkages that have existed in the past and those that can be perceived today. The process of social transformation today generates many serious problems and contradictions. The emerging pattern of country-town nexus or relationship constitutes one such aspect. Relationship between village and town have always attracted the attention of social scientists, political workers, activists and policy makers. In most such cases, it is generally that the town/city exercises a near hegemonic control over the density of village life. The two, that is town and country, are depicted as polar opposites which do not match each other in terms of population composition, density of population, professions, occupations, lifestyle, etc. They believe that in reality, village and town are obverse sides of a structural process that implicates both and has a telling impact on the broader civilization, culture and history of a society. Thus, country and town or rural and urban are necessarily interacting units, and the pattern of interaction is such that neither the country nor the town is privileged as the epicenter of social transformation. Both mutually influence each other, but not on the basis of an ad hoc format, but rather on account of supra-local forces of transition. These supra-local forces need to be conceptually understood and appreciated in order to arrive at a more refined approach towards the study of the country-town nexus, which will have greater imperial validity and relevance. Sources of rural-urban linkage. The linkage between the rural and urban can be seen as several levels of social existence. The interdependency as well as influence of one over the other has socio-cultural, political and economic dimensions. Thus, one can see the village interacting with the cities at an economic level of sending raw materials, labor in the form of migrants, arts and crafts, etc., to the urban centers, while the cities provide the market to the villager, sources of entertainment, employment, pilgrimage, better information and technology lie in the urban areas. Harold Gold has examined that the rural-urban linkage and says that peasant villages are outgrowths of a particular type of socio-economic development. This is the cause of their distinctiveness. The bulk of the population of non-industrial civilization lives in villages where their relationship is essentially to the land, either directly as cultivators or indirectly as suppliers of cultivators' needs. Human and animal power are the basic sources of energy and are employed within the organizational framework of kingship groups which are at this technological level simultaneously, the chief loci of production, reproduction and socialization. Urban elites are able to extend their power into the villages sufficiently to gain control of the surplus produced there, but they have neither the knowledge nor the inclination to alter the technological system itself sufficiently to get free of their dependence upon the villages in existing form. At least this is so as long as they remain pre-industrial in their orientations. Even after such elites or portions of them change their goals to conform with industrial age values and the substitution of machines for muscle commences, the transformation is slow and the essential symbiosis between village and urban center persists for a long while, as witness any of the so-called underdeveloped societies today. Centripetal and centrifugal forces in rural society. Gold talks of both centripetal and centrifugal forces acting upon the village communities, one leading towards increasing self-sufficiency and autonomy, and the other forcing the community to interact and depend on the outside society. The centrifugal forces are those of market, media, government and non-government agencies, banks, post offices, etc. Politics plays a very important role. Education can be seen as a major force of social change. Cole says that ideally, the village could contain within its borders families representing all the needed caste functions, but in reality, no village ever does. Some specialists must be engaged from other communities so that complete unity in the division of labor is attainable only at the cost of cross-cutting civic unity to some degree. He speaks of the Jajmani system which draws together server and served from different castes and from within and outside the village into a kingship like network of economic interactions. Changing trends of migration in the context of social transformation and change in post-independent India. K.L. Sharma says that the character of both countryside and urban settings has undergone tremendous transformation as a result of some very basic structural innovations. These include constitutional provisions, developmental planning, green revolution, expansion of higher education, new avenues of employment and infrastructural inputs like roads, electricity, irrigation, etc. A large number of village people are working in the rural areas as school teachers, clerks, patwaris, gram sevaks, compounders, peons, Ayurveda physicians, etc. Also, we find a good number of village people working in banks, offices of state and central government, colleges and universities. This feature has affected the trend of migration of people en masse from poverty-stricken areas affected by famines or floods, or even otherwise to far-off areas like Assam, Calcutta, Bombay, from generally places like eastern UP and Bihar. Due to the availability of alternate employment in rural areas, in the recent few years, this migration population number has come down. Earlier, most migrants from villages to cities used to migrate, leaving their families at home in the villages. But today, they take their families too with them. This has reduced their visits to their native places considerably. However, rural-urban connections have increased enormously within a given district state due to several other reasons as well. Sharma says that the new development which has taken place today is that people from villages who have acquired professional status of school teachers, patwaris or gram sevak prefer to work in their own villages or nearby villages from where they can commute daily or visit their family during the weekends. There are others who prefer to work at the headquarters of tehsil, block, district and the state depending upon their respective positions, interests and preferences. Many even prefer to migrate to places outside one's own state, and people have often settled down permanently in various small, medium and large towns in their own states or other states in India. However, most of them have not severed their connections with kith and kin in their native villages. Another feature which is important is that not only the upper and lower caste have moved out of their villages, but a large number of better off members from the middle caste peasant families too have migrated to the nearest towns and the state headquarters. A good number of them have taken up white collar jobs at the lower and middle levels. Some have also become petty traders and shopkeepers. Such a situation has also affected power politics in the countryside. More than anything, it is quite clear that country and town are non-independent variables of social change. The independent variables are, for example, policy measures, planning and infrastructural inputs which transform village and town and rechannelize agents of social change such as education, economic resources, migration, employment avenues and opportunities. All these are affected unevenly for different sections of society because of the persisting unevenness among people. Thus, persisting inequalities became an obstacle in social transformation. Industrial development. Rural-urban linkage can be seen in all aspects of social life. However, the economic aspect deals not only with exchange of goods and services or needs of markets, etc. by the rural peasants as per mutual needs, but it has several other dimensions as well. Everything is interrelated. Therefore, economic development resulting from the processes of industrialization and urbanization has affected life in both the countryside as well as the urban areas. The urban world and its technological developments impinges upon the rural in what Manorma Savoor believes to be a highly exploitative relationship with the rural areas. The development of agro-technologies, food processing units and large-scale export of food items. Urban-rural relation in history has been an exploitative one. There is a great deal of data on imperialist policies and the current mode of exploitation by the multinationals. What is significant is that they have first turned to their own countryside and then to the third world for exploitation not only of raw material but also set up simultaneously cheap production centers to overcome the rising production costs in their own metropolitan centers. Thus we see that there is a global angle to the rural-urban linkage with the dominant urban developed world, exploiting the underdeveloped countries, the poverty-stricken rural masses, who lose not only what they produce to the urban world but are often exploited in the sense of providing their labor at very low wages. Nature of social transformation and rural-urban linkage. The emerging processes of social transformation that Indian society is undergoing today has changed the urban-rural linkage. Historically, country-town relationship had a pattern of interdependence in India that was governed by tradition and economy. The traditional city throughout history had a near symbiotic relationship with countryside. The economic relationship was complementary. The occupational specialization and division of labor offered opportunities as well as change and mobility. Folk elite cultural tradition and its role structures established meaningful nexuses between country town and capital cities. Commerce, political administration, ritual and religious practices, and art and aesthetics constituted nodal principles around which this country-town relationship was maintained, commensurate with the level of technology and modes of production and distribution. A near equilibrium between country-town relationships had traditionally evolved. However, during the colonial period, this harmony was broken and a decline of both the country as well as the towns took place. Drain of wealth from India left the masses poverty-stricken. The large-scale pauperization of artisans and peasantry took place as a result of massive disruption of traditional Indian economy and its social base. The pattern of country-town relationship that emerged during the colonial and post-colonial periods of Indian history, in spite of the impact of British rule and forces of modernization, could not restore the balance between the country-town relationship. Ironically, the process of modernization in India took a highly segmentary form as a result of colonial distortion. The pace of modernization grew mainly from urban metropolitan centers and had a narrow base in class and caste structure in specific areas of economy. It was only after independence that attempt was made to broad base the processes of development. Successive plans endeavored to implement a development policy which arrived at a balanced growth of social strata, but its ideological framework made it too difficult to achieve quick results. A lot of criticism of the industrialization policies followed just after independence. These policies resulted in a form of urbanization which only contributed to enlargement of social contradictions. It led to massive migration of rural poor to cities without their integration in the urban industrial economy. As a result, we find crowded cities, poor infrastructure, slums and crimes related with slums like drug addiction, juvenile delinquency, robberies, murders, etc. It is in keeping with this historical development that we must view society in Uttar Pradesh. It's primarily rural countryside and the urban cities such as Lucknow and Kanpur. Kanpur is a very good example of an industrial town and depicts the typical problems of lopsided urban growth, emerging caste and class structure. Singh explains this uneven process of industrialization and urbanization and its repercussion on various aspects of social structure. There is no doubt that the rapid pace of industrialization has given strength to Indian economy. The technological and economic growth has set in new forces of social stratification and social mobility. A substantial urban middle class has emerged in cities. New entrepreneurial and professional groups have rapidly enlarged their numbers. But the social character of these classes does not promote a balanced relationships between country and town. The ideological orientation of the urban middle classes alienates them from establishing fruitful linkages with the countryside. Rather, an institutional setup in which the rise of these classes is such that promotes and strengthens the dependency of village upon the city. We witness the paradox of industrial and professional growth without social justice. In post-independent India, the processes of industrialization, technological advance, land reforms, availability of improved seeds and fertilizers, etc., led to the emergence of a new middle class in rural areas. This class, which was basically composed of middle caste in the countryside or peasant caste, was a product of the Green Revolution, which led to increased agricultural production and prosperity. The leaders of Green Revolution, in most cases, came from the traditional peasant caste, the former tenants of village landlords or feudal nobility. The emergence of this group in villages has had a dual consequence for country-town relationship. On the one hand, the dependence of modern agriculture, urban industrial inputs, banks, markets and pricing mechanisms, etc., has enlarged the nexus between city and country. But on the other, this relationship itself has precipitated a crisis in country-town relationship in general. The spot in political, cultural and physical levels of communication and contact between the two social entities has intensified self-consciousness and identity of the new rural middle classes. The economic prosperity resulting from the agricultural developments has given access to some other opportunities to the rural middle classes, such as education, political power, and political participation. It has strengthened their voice in the developmental process of the rural society. The rise of the rural middle classes and its economic and political strength gets compounded due to the solitary character of these classes in villages on caste and kingship lines. The middle caste class in rural areas dominate over village panchayats and its block and district level representations. They constitute a powerful political resource on which the professional politicians severely depend for electoral successes in state legislatures and often parliamentary elections. The economic and political clout of the rural middle classes could be observed in some states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, Western Uttar Pradesh, and so on. Rural-urban middle class, a comparison. If we compare the rural middle classes with the urban, we find one major similarity. The rural middle classes have ideological affinity at one level with the urban middle classes, as both of them share conservative and narrow utilitarian ethos. But the rural middle classes also harbor, on another level, intense antagonism and conflict with the urban middle classes, entrepreneurs, and professional groups. This antagonism and conflict has arisen due to certain historical reasons. The process of development in agriculture has, after a period of time, slowed down due to structural and technological stagnation. The so-called rich peasants have come over the past few years, confronted the prospect of downward mobility in terms of social and economic status due to unfavorable price policy, stagnation in agriculture productivity, fragmentation of landholding due to rise in population, and non-availability of other avenues of employment for their youth. This post-green revolution, underdevelopment in agriculture, further reinforces the alienation of middle classes in rural areas from the urban and industrial middle classes. This fact has been a setback to their level of aspiration, which has seen its peak during the Green Revolution phase. The role of media has also been considerable in intensifying the grievances of the middle peasantry. Politicians too have often attempted to set one against the other for political gains by highlighting the fact that the peasants, especially the middle caste peasants, have been deprived of their economic and political benefits due to the government policies which have favored the urban population. This has resulted in a series of farmers' protest movements in several parts of India, including Uttar Pradesh. This perspective is based on facts about highly uneven levels of rural-urban development and inequitous availability of resources, fiscal and market opportunities. The ideological stance of the middle-class peasant movements is to draw support from starkness of the unequal development between country and town in India. Indeed, it is held that cities and industries have grown in India at the cost of villages and agriculture. This is supported from developmental statistics as well. Of the total energy generated in the country, the share of villages is only slightly above 9%, where more than 70% population resides. Since majority population in the villages is illiterate, they are unable to demand or voice their needs. Taking advantage of this situation, the new rulers of India have succeeded in imposing a system in which the rural masses have been reduced to the status of captive producers and captive consumers. These rural masses are left with no choice but to sell their produce at the cheapest and buy their requirements at the highest prices. They have also been denied their due share in planned expenditure, supplies of power and credit, and facilities for proper education and Medicare. Conclusion. Summing up this lecture, we hope that you have understood that the country-town nexus, as it has emerged in the processes of social transformation in India during the past 7 decades, tends to intensify the alienative rather than the integration focuses in our policy, economy, culture, and social system. The momentum for it is being provided by the emerging new middle classes in our society. No doubt these classes have demonstrated their entrepreneurial and economic dynamism by selective adoption of utilitarian rationality, but it is devoid of social ethic of democracy, socialism, and secularism. The town-country category suffers from this uneven and negatively ideological process of development. The problem is deeply structural and ideological. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. For more details, please read the e-text of this lecture properly and attempt the questions in the end. Thank you.